Welcome, everyone. I'm Dana Peever, decision expert, author, speaker, and podcast host. You're listening to the Wildly Courageous Women podcast. More women than ever are faced with challenging decisions on a regular basis. I am so privileged to sit down with them to discuss exactly what they've gone through and how they've come out the other side, realizing their wildest dreams. I'm sure you'll be able to relate. And don't forget to stay to the end to take advantage of my latest free gift. Let's get started. Hello, you wildly courageous women, you. Welcome to the Wildly Courageous Women podcast. I'm Dana Peever, decision expert. And as always, we're here talking about decisions that have been made in our lives that were courageous or impactful or changed the course of our life, or even one that maybe we wish we could go back on. So each week I join you twice, once with a guest and once solo. Today I'll be sharing an impactful decision that one of my clients made. But based on the subject matter, she has requested anonymity. So she's given me permission to tell her story. So since I've been studying the science of decision making for over 30 years, all of my life's decisions have been made very intentionally using my 5-step decision smith system and app. And obviously, that's also what I use with my clients. So I'll walk you through all her thoughts from behind the scenes. But before we get started, I want to make sure to remind you to stay to the end to get access to my latest freebie. All right. So let's get started on the decision that we are going to discuss today. And maybe it's a phenomenon that you have heard of. I know it's really come to light in the last few years. And it is career related, and it has to do with quiet quitting. Have any of you heard that terminology? I'm sure you have it in some form or another. Perhaps some of you have experienced having to do that yourself. But essentially, it's when you're in a job and expectations are so high that you find yourself getting a little bit burnt out. And you decide to just do the bare minimum to exist in your job without getting terminated. That's the easiest way to put it. You don't do a lot of extras. You don't do any extras. You're really focused on your mental health and well-being and making sure that your life is going well and putting that in priority over top of the company's needs. Again, nobody's not doing their job, but they're definitely not doing anything extra. So that's how we came to having a discussion with the client I'm referring to. And again, she's given me permission to share her story. She just, has moved on and doesn't want the legacy of that carried behind her. So a little bit of history. She worked for a very large company. She was there for about 5 years. And she, progressed up. She had received a few promotions internally. And, things were going fairly well. She managed a few teams and, they were growing and their turnover wasn't really existent. So, strength there. And, things were going well. She liked the work that she did. She liked the teams that reported into her. And, it was really a role that satisfied her work-life balance to a degree, or at least it did, and, accommodated, the things that she needed to do from a personal perspective and her family life and that kind of thing. But when COVID hit, things got really busy and tough, and expectations rose. There were a lot of layoffs, which put more work on everyone's shoulders who was left remaining. And it really started to take its toll. She had always been a stellar performer, and her performance reviews reflected that. And when she went to talk to her boss about, how she was feeling and starting to get overwhelmed, he wasn't very receptive. He just really, paid her some lip service, told her that everybody was in the same boat and essentially to, figure it out. He was known to be a little passive aggressive. So, she was really cautious of what she shared and how much she shared, because she knew there would be some kind of backlash if, she was too adamant about, needing help and needing to work normal hours and that type of thing. During COVID, she had been working, 8 to 6 back-to-back meetings. And then at 6 p.m., her day would essentially start, when she would then, have to find the time to do all the work that had accumulated from all the meetings she'd been attending. And that was pretty typical of her for months during COVID. And it was really starting to take its toll. She was starting to feel burnt out. She was, she found herself getting short with her family members, a little short-tempered at home, which, she never carried her work home. And she was even a little bit short with some of her team members, and that definitely wasn't fair to them. Her work wasn't suffering, but her outlook definitely was. She was exhausted. She wasn't, participating in all the things that she normally would have at home on the weekends and that kind of thing, because she was so tired. And, she knew this job was a good job for her. It paid her well. She liked what she did. And like I said, she liked the teams that reported into her. But she took a really good look at what price she was paying. And that's when she began to investigate, what quiet quitting looked like. And at that point, she put some parameters in place, just some minor ones, to help get things back on track. So a few examples, of what she did. She started proposing new times for meeting requests that were being scheduled outside of her regular core working hours. So if somebody scheduled something for, say, a 6 p.m. meeting, she proposed a new time during, work hours the following day. There were times still when, it was necessary to get everybody together to have, one or two meetings outside of regular work hours during the week, but not regularly every single day. And, she started to train people that she wouldn't accept those meetings that were requested outside of working hours. It was just, it got to be an environment where that was expected. And if you didn't, people were surprised when you, didn't accept a meeting after hours. And, something else that she did, she had her work mail app on her phone with notifications. And, she's a lot like me in a sense that if you see a notification, you need to open it and see what it says. So by taking that notification off, she wasn't prompted that there was work in her inbox. So, she was able to disconnect evenings and weekends when she would normally be, wondering what those notifications said. She just did a lot of things that helped get her schedule back on track. And she worked that way for a while. And it seemed to be working to help her lessen her burnout. but it still wasn't making things any better at work. And then she was offered another promotion. And the promotion had her overseeing another department that she hadn't previously been responsible for. And the increase that she was offered to, take on the new duties as well as the additional department wasn't in line with what the company normally offered. And when I heard that from her, I said, that's another phenomenon that I'm hearing experienced a lot, which is called quiet hiring. And it's something that companies are doing under the guise, in my opinion, and this could be polarizing, but my perspective of quiet hiring, companies' perspectives of quiet hiring are to broaden people's scopes and to allow them the opportunity to take on additional tasks and workbenches in the hopes of preparing them for a promotion or a new role. But what is happening all too often is that companies are just having people do double the work, and giving them an increase, but that increase is nothing in comparison to what it would cost to have a second person in a role tandem. So people are being given more responsibilities with a insignificant pay bump to do a lot more work. And I think companies are taking advantage of people and saying, hey, we're giving you these opportunities. If you want to be promoted, you've got to do this. So people are really caught in the middle, where they want to move up, but they're, trading their soul to the devil, essentially, to be able to be given those opportunities. And if they don't do it, somebody else might. Somebody else who perhaps is in a situation different than my client, who had a family and kids and that kind of thing, and was trying to balance that out, versus potentially someone single or somebody who was an empty nester who may have had more time to dedicate to their job. And in reality, a promotion should go to the person who will do the best job. And she was definitely that person, and was really caught between trying to balance her career growth and her burnout level. So at the point where she was offered this promotion, and the increase she was offered to take it on was inconsequential almost. She talked to her boss about it and how that left her feeling. And he had to agree with her perspective, and did wind up giving her more money than originally offered. But she was at that point in a position where she had a couple choices. She could have just said, no, thank you. I don't want to take on the added responsibilities for what you're offering, because it really was a slap in the face to her. She could negotiate an increase that was more in line with the duties she would be taking on, or she could, look at opportunities outside her current company, because at that point she was starting to feel like a commodity that was being used. So, she took the promotion because, like I said, he did wind up getting her some additional money on top of the initial offer. But she went into that role, um, not probably as they had anticipated, excitedly with both feet. She was hesitant. Um, she felt used, and she uh, did her job to the level that was required for that role to move forward, and not have any delays, or not um, be on time for deadlines and things like that. She never let things like that slide, but she really started removing herself from different aspects of her job that she'd been previously been engaged in, different extracurricular projects and committees and things like that that she was always participative in. She removed herself from those. She had always been the person who, when there was a new project or something to take on, she would put up her hand, and she just didn't do that anymore. Again, she kept to her working hours, and only spent time working beyond those hours when absolutely necessary. And she was in a place where she wasn't feeling burnt out anymore. Thank goodness, she got as much of a work-life balance back as she could. Um, but she realized what a toxic environment she was working in, based on, first of all, the quiet hiring that she felt was taking place at the company. And again, she was feeling a little used from that perspective. And, we talked about the fact that she made the choice to take that promotion, which, she doesn't regret. But she also knew that it was a stepping stone for her out of the company. She knew she would be exiting when the time was right. So she was able to, like I say, still get her work done, still contribute to the level required, but nothing beyond that. She wasn't, involving herself with anyone outside of her team's growth, and making sure that they were doing the best job that they could be, and that she was still, helping them develop. But beyond that, she was pretty closed off to any other, company activities. And as a trade-off for the time that she normally would have spent in extended meetings and things like that beyond her working hours, she spent that time, updating her resume, updating her LinkedIn profile, and searching for new opportunities. So, the trade-off in time for her was really impactful, in that it allowed her to spend some time furthering her career. And, we had a conversation about that because, I talked to so many people from a career perspective, just, in my HR life. Career seems to be a huge topic of a discussion, both with people, in internal companies, and, clients that I've talked to. And I think one thing that we can take maybe from millennials is that, you're the person in charge of your career. Too often we get caught up in the promises of promotion and promises of more money internally, and letting a company dictate or, choose our path. And I personally have even been caught up in that. And I realize, that you're the only person who knows what's best for you in terms of your career. You're the only person who knows what success feels like for you, because it's absolutely different for everyone. So if you can, sit back and really ensure that you're looking at the factors that uh, make you feel successful and proud of who you are and where you've come. A company can't tell you or dictate to you what that looks like for you. Certainly they have, competencies and things like that, but they don't um, necessarily mirror or match what you need to feel successful in your role. So she had the opportunity then to really take a look at what it was that, her company offered, because it did have some good points, but the bad far outweighed the good. And she finally realized that nobody was going to take, the ball in their hands and make good decisions for her career. She was the only one that could do that. So, that's when like I said, she updated her resume and she started really doing some dedicated research, um, a lot about cultures in terms of where she was looking for a new job. And so she really did her homework. She narrowed companies down based on their websites and their philanthropic perspectives, and she read a lot of articles about companies. She visited Glassdoor. She even where she could talk to current employees there, to get their take on how things really were internally, because I know a lot of companies have a great website and profess all of these great things, and behind the scenes, it's pretty laughable. So she was making sure that what she saw online and what the marketing departments for those companies were putting out there was in fact true, and there was a good employee culture. And so she spent a lot of time doing this. She was 6 months into her research, and at the same time, she maintained, her quiet quitting at work, where she again did the minimum required not to get fired, but nothing extra, and put that time against herself to really upgrade her own job search. And ultimately, at the end of the day, she was made an offer at a fabulous company with a great boss who recognized her skill set and paid her what she was worth, and who wasn't passive aggressive. And she made the move there over 6 months ago. And we caught up not too long ago as we were talking about this podcast, and she is so ecstatically happy about the decision that she made to walk away from a fairly toxic culture, to one that's just feels like home. And it's really interesting. I'm so happy that she was able to do that, that she still maintained enough of her workload to not get herself in trouble, but really put a plan in place to dedicate time to her own search. And when I work with clients who are considering changing their jobs or their career paths, or whatever it might be, we spend a lot of time considering what options lie in front of you. And a lot of times when we plug that information into my app, it's really telling. And let me give you an example. So if we went through my 5-step decision Smith system, so the first step is to, what decision you have in front of you. And obviously, in this circumstance, it would be, what to do from a job perspective. And then, the second step is listing your options. So, in this particular case, she could have maintained status quo, which was working her long hours and really not taking care of herself. She could quiet quit, which, as we know, meant that she really scaled back on the work that she was doing and her output. And, she could have existed like that for a long time. Or she could quit in conjunction with, a job search externally. And when we put those options into the app, and then list our factors and do all our rating and scoring, even people who are considering, if I'm working with a client who has two potential job offers in front of them, sometimes they limit the options to just those two offers. But what I always recommend is that they put status quo, staying in their current job, as one of the options, because once you get the scores, that is really telling. So, as an example, I remember working with a client who was, considering another opportunity, but wasn't sure that their job was so bad that they really needed to make a move. And when we, went through the scoring of the app, and the current rule came out with such a negative score, that lit a fire under them. They knew that the option that they had currently in front of them wasn't a good option either. But initially, if they decided not to take the offer that they had in front of them at that point in time, they were just going to stay in their job and be happy with that. But after going through the process, the the score that they had for their current job just showed how bad it was and how toxic an environment it was. And it really lit a fire under them to, make sure their job search was a huge priority for them. And, again, in that circumstance, they did do a lot of interviews for other opportunities and was quickly awarded a new role, which allowed them to move from their current role, which again didn't score very highly. Sometimes you throw your current job in, and it's surprisingly, even if you feel like your job isn't great, when you are really honest about the factors that you're taking into consideration, sometimes your job actually scores higher, and you can kind of rest easy that, oh, it's not as bad as I sometimes think it is, because it's still satisfying the factors that I'm taking into consideration in my career. Anyway, the phenomenon of quiet quitting and quiet hiring, in my opinion, won't be going anywhere anytime soon. Companies are always going to figure out how they can take advantage of employees to satisfy their bottom line. And that's just a really sad state. In my consulting life in HR, I was exposed to hundreds of different companies. And unfortunately, ones that put their employees first are farther and farther between. And that's sad for us as employees, because, what are we left with? And I really, really applaud my client, the one who has wanted to stay anonymous, for the steps that she took to recognize and make a better life for herself. So that is the decision that she made in terms of quiet quitting, and then, ultimately moving on to a company who really satisfied all the factors that she was considering that she needed to feel successful in her job. So I want to thank all the listeners out there for joining us today and talking about quiet quitting and quiet hiring. And if you're ready to realize your wildest dreams, I'd love for you to come and join us in the Wildly Courageous Women Facebook group, where we're changing people's lives one brave decision at a time. I'm Dana Peever. Until next time, make great decisions and do life fun. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Wildly Courageous Women. Keep listening to hear more stories of these incredible women realizing their wildest dreams. If you have a story to tell about a decision that you've made that has impacted your life, I'd love to feature you as a guest. Please get in touch and don't forget to grab my latest gift by clicking below. I'm Dana Peever. As always, make great decisions and do life fun.